Okay, picture this. Late 19th century Swiss Alps. You've got Friedrich Nietzsche, this philosopher known for just, these powerful radical ideas. He publishes a book. And it's got this message that, well, it really echoes through history. God is dead.
Heavy stuff.
Right. But here's the thing. It wasn't like some happy atheist cheer. It was a warning, a lament almost for this new dangerous age he saw coming.
Okay.
But get this. That huge, world-shaking idea. The book sold less than 40 copies.
40? Seriously?
40, yeah. Wild, isn't it?
Wow.
So today we're doing a deep dive into Chapter 5 of Mark Manson's Everything is Fucked. The chapter title, Hope is Fucked.
Doesn't pull any punches.
Not at all. And we're going to explore how Manson uses Nietzsche, his life, his philosophy, to really challenge how we think about hope. Showing it as this motivator, sure, but also maybe something destructive.
Interesting. So hope isn't always good.
That's the angle. So our mission here is to unpack Nietzsche's dangerous age and figure out what it means to live beyond that conventional hope. Maybe even, learn to embrace what is.
All right. I'm intrigued. Where do we start?
Let's start with this fascinating contradiction right at the heart of Nietzsche's own life. It involves this amazing woman, Meta von Salis.
Meta von Salis. Okay.
So imagine Meta. She was, well, a total trailblazer for her time. The first woman ever to get a PhD in Switzerland.
Wow. That's huge.
Yeah. A leading feminist writer, fluent in 4 languages, publishing stuff all over Europe, arguing for things like women's rights. Pretty radical ideas back then.
And she connected with Nietzsche's work.
Deeply. She saw in his writing this powerful case for individual empowerment, for radical personal responsibility. She actually believed his ideas could help liberate women from what she called their perpetual servitude.
Okay, but here's where it gets kind of weird, right? The contrast with Nietzsche himself.
Exactly. Tell us about that.
Well, while he's writing nonstop about power, self-reliance, all that, physically, he was quite frail, often really sick, even bedridden.
Yeah, I read something like 260 days one year.
Yeah, something like that. Debilitating migraines, almost blind by 30, digestive issues, just constant pain. So he was completely dependent on other people, friends, family, mostly women, actually.
Including Meta.
Including Meta, yeah, and a whole bunch of other really impressive independent women, professors, landowners, entrepreneurs, early feminists, really. They saw these liberating messages in his work, which raises this big question, doesn't it? How could this guy, preaching radical self-reliance and honestly often sounding pretty misogynistic, how could he be so dependent on and championed by these powerful, independent women?
It's a paradox.
It really is. It seems like his own lifelong dependence created this massive blind spot in his big prophetic vision.
It's just an incredible story of dedication, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit of delusion, too. These women were literally cleaning him, feeding him, helping him move around.
Convinced he was this history-changing genius.
Yeah, totally. Even when basically nobody was reading his stuff and his peers thought he was, kind of an outcast. They just kept the faith.
Always hoping for that breakthrough.
So how does all this dependency, these relationships, how does it connect to his bigger ideas about society? He had this whole theory about what drives us, what causes conflict.
Right. His idea about starting a civilization. Imagine you just drop a bunch of people onto some land, limited resources. What happens?
So it gets ahead, right?
Exactly. Some people are maybe naturally smarter, stronger, more driven, whatever. They start accumulating more stuff, more power, more advantages. You get a hierarchy. Elites at the top, masses at the bottom.
The rich get richer kind of thing.
Pretty much. Nietzsche called the elites the masters and the working masses the slaves.
Okay, masters and slaves.
And he argued the masters develop what he called a master morality. They basically believe they deserve their privilege. Might makes right. If you worked hard, if you were ingenious, you earned it. You deserve the benefits.
Like if you ace a test because you studied like crazy, you feel you earned that top grade.
Exactly. That feeling of justification, that's master morality.
Okay, so what about the slaves? They must see things differently.
Totally differently. They develop slave morality. This view says that the people who've suffered the most, the disadvantaged, the ones exploited, they deserve the best treatment because of their suffering.
Okay, so like that classmate who fails the exam, but they have 18 siblings and work 2 jobs. You feel they deserve a break because of their hardship.
Precisely. Their sacrifice is valued. So master morality values strength, achievement, hierarchy. Slave morality values sacrifice, empathy, equality.
And Manson connects this to our feeling brain.
Yeah, Manson suggests both these moral systems tap into something deep in us, our intuitive emotional side. They generate strong feelings, strong judgments, and hope.
Hope for different outcomes based on these values.
Right. And Nietzsche saw these two value systems. You can often see echoes in right-wing and left-wing politics as being in constant tension, constant opposition. He thought this was the root cause of pretty much all political and social conflict ever.
Wow.
And he warned that this conflict, it was about to get a whole lot worse.
Okay, so let's track that. For most of history, where do people get their hope from?
Mostly spiritual religions, right? Beliefs that explain the world, explain suffering, and promise something better, usually after death. Because life here was generally slow, hard, and didn't seem like it could change much.
Until
Yeah.
something big happened around the 17th century.
Yeah, something huge. Science.
A new kind of religion.
In a way, but different. Unlike spiritual beliefs, science is based on evidence, it's open to being challenged, it changes and improves. You could argue it's the only consistently good thing humanity's ever come up with for itself. Think of all the inventions, medicine.
Yeah, huge advances.
But science did something else, something maybe even more profound psychologically. It introduced the idea of growth, progress.
How so?
Well, for the first time, people could actually see their lives getting better within their own lifetime. They could look back 10, 20 years and say, wow, we have more food now, or we're healthier, or look at this new technology. Tangible improvement.
And that changes everything about how you see the future.
Totally. Suddenly, you don't have to just wait for the afterlife for things to get better. You could actually make things better here and now.
Which must have unleashed all sorts of new ideas.
Exactly. Ideas about freedom, individual responsibility, equality. This led to the rise of what Manson calls ideological religions. Things like democracy, nationalism, communism, socialism.
New systems offering hope for a better life on Earth.
Right. New containers for hope. But here's the catch, and this links back to Nietzsche's worry.
Okay.
These new ideologies, they offered real, tangible benefits, sure. But they didn't have the infallibility of the old gods. Well, if you challenge someone's spiritual belief, they can often just say, well, you can't prove it wrong. It's a matter of faith. It's kind of evidence proof. But if your ideology, your political system, your economic theory leads to disaster, if your big project fails miserably,
then your hope gets
crushed, your whole identity might feel destroyed. And that's what worried Nietzsche. His whole God is dead thing wasn't him gloating, yay, no God.
It was a lament, you said, a cry for help.
Exactly. He feared we weren't psychologically ready to handle the weight of figuring out our own meaning, our own cosmic significance without God. He saw these new ideologies, democracy, communism, all of them as just kicking the can down the road, postponing an existential crisis.
He wasn't a fan of any of them.
Hated them all, basically. He thought they were doomed to clash and cause way more violence than they solved. He literally predicted wars between gods, and those gods will be us, our ideologies.
That is chilling.
Mm-hmm.
And it leads us to think about hope itself in a darker way, doesn't it? Let's talk about Pandora's box.
Ugh. The classic myth, yeah. Pandora opens the box, all the evils fly out, sickness, war, misery.
But at the bottom, something's left. Hope. Usually seen as the good thing, right?
Yeah.
The antidote. It inspires heroes, like that story of Witold Pilecki in Auschwitz. Amazing courage fueled by hope.
Right, that's the standard take. Hope helps us overcome evil, but what if that's wrong? What if hope isn't the antidote? What if hope is just another one of the evils left in the box? Maybe the sneakiest one.
Whoa. Okay, unpack that. Hope as evil.
Think about it like a tool, a surgeon's scalpel.
Okay.
It can save a life, right? But it can also take one. Hope can lift us up, inspire greatness, but it can also destroy us.
How so?
Well, look at history again. Hope didn't just inspire Pilecki. Hope also fueled the Nazis and their horrific genocide. Hope fueled communist revolutions that killed millions. Hope fueled atrocities committed by Western nations in the name of spreading democracy or economic freedom.
So hope can be used to justify terrible things.
Absolutely. Which leads to Manson's really core argument here. Hope is fundamentally destructive because it relies on rejecting what is.
Rejecting the present.
Yeah. Hope requires that you see something as broken, as wrong, as needing to be fixed. It forces you to be anti-something, anti-poverty, anti-injustice, anti-suffering, anti-whatever.
So by focusing on what's wrong and what we hope for, what?
Yeah.
We miss something.
Or maybe, Manson suggests, our very psychological makeup means we're trapped. Either we're in perpetual conflict, tribalism, us versus them, fueled by competing hopes, or we slide into nihilism, just total apathy and isolation because hoping seems pointless or too painful.
So the conflict, it actually keeps the hope alive.
In a really uncomfortable way, yeah. Manson puts it starkly, hope requires everything being fucked. The very things that give our lives meaning through hope, our tribes, our beliefs, our causes, are often the exact same things that divide us, that cause hatred and conflict.
That is a bleak picture. The hope that brings joy also brings danger.
It brings people together, often just to tear other groups apart.
Okay, so if hope is this dangerous, double-edged thing, what's the alternative? According to Nietzsche, anyway.
Nietzsche thought we had to evolve, to look beyond hope as we usually think of it, beyond our standard ideas of good and evil. He called this alternative amor fati.
Love of fate. Amor fati. What does that actually mean? Is it just giving up? Accepting whatever happens?
No, that's a common misunderstanding. It's not passive resignation. It's more like unconditional acceptance of all of life. The good stuff, the bad stuff, the meaningful moments, the totally meaningless ones.
Accepting the highs and the lows.
Exactly. It means loving your pain even, embracing your suffering. It's about closing that gap between what you want reality to be and what reality is, by choosing to desire reality as it is.
Wow. So hope for nothing in the usual sense. Don't wish things were different.
Right. Don't hope for more happiness or less suffering or hope to magically become a better person. Instead, Nietzsche says, hope for this.
Hope for this moment.
Hope for this reality. With all its opportunities, yes, but also all its oppressions. The suffering that comes with freedom, the wisdom you gain from ignorance, the strength you find in surrender. It's not about ditching optimism, but about grounding it in what's real right now. Actively embracing reality, even the tough parts, as your starting point.
So act without hope. That sounds almost contradictory.
It does, right. But the idea is, don't just hope for better, be better in this moment and the next. It's about shifting from passive wishing to active responsibility within the reality you have.
That feels like a huge mental shift.
It is, and many people fear the underlying truth, right? The idea that, you and I and everyone we know will eventually die, and on a cosmic scale, maybe none of it matters much.
Yeah, that's not exactly comforting.
But Nietzsche flips it. He says that truth doesn't free us from responsibility. It actually frees us to be responsible.
How so?
If nothing ultimately matters in some grand cosmic plan, then there's no grand cosmic reason not to love ourselves or each other. No reason not to treat the planet well. No reason not to live each moment fully, as if you might have to live it again and again, eternally.
The eternal occurrence idea.
Yeah. So the conclusion is, we have to learn to love what is. Amor fati.
Let's bring it back to Meta von Salis for a moment.
Yeah.
That last day she walked with Nietzsche in the Alps.
Such a powerful scene. He was really struggling physically and mentally, muttering things.
As they got near the village, she realized she couldn't stop for him. She just had to keep going, get him home.
Right. And then that incredible moment happens. Nietzsche lags behind. He's waving his walking stick, shouting at cows of all things.
What was he shouting?
We have killed him, you and I. We are his murderers. Are we not perpetually falling in all directions? Classic Nietzschean stuff. And then he declares, man is a rope tied between beast and Superman, a rope over an abyss. What is great in man is that he is a bridge and not a goal.
Heavy. How did Meta react?
It hit her hard. She suddenly realized that her own big project, her own ideological god, feminism, women's liberation, was, in Nietzsche's view, just another human construct, another thing destined to become a dead god eventually.
But did that stop her?
Not at all. She went on. She didn't become famous, but she quietly, almost anonymously, changed the world. Organizing marches for women's suffrage in Germany, Austria, inspiring thousands, liberating more actual people than many famous great men ever did.
She became like a hidden thread, Manson says.
Exactly. Barely seen, easily forgotten, but essential, holding things together, which gives so much meaning to Nietzsche's last words to her.
What were they?
He told her, I love those who do not know how to live, for they are the ones who cross over.
Wow.
And Meta was that. She didn't seem to hope for a different reality in that passive way. She just acted within the reality she had. She embraced her fate, her path, and focused on simply being better moment by moment. She crossed that abyss, maybe not knowing how to live perfectly for herself, but living so profoundly for others. She embodied amor fati in action.
So wrapping this up, This deep dive leaves us with a pretty uncomfortable idea, doesn't it? That hope, this thing we cherish, might actually be both the cause and the effect of everything being, well, fucked, as Manson puts it.
Yeah, that it requires something to be broken, that it pushes us into conflict, or maybe just makes us withdraw.
But maybe the real liberation, the real path forward, isn't about desperately hoping for a different future. Maybe it's about embracing amor fati, loving what is, right here, right now.
It's a profound challenge, really. The challenge for you, listening, isn't just to hope for better, but to actively be better, to act, not necessarily because you hope for some perfect outcome, but with this sense of radical responsibility for this moment and the next one.
So the final thought to leave you with, what part of your own reality right now could you choose to accept, maybe even love, without needing or hoping for it to change first?